So what if you had a user's manual for the modern world? I'm not talking about some self-help book, but something, well, something a lot stranger. We're talking about a massive library of questions, all designed to be fed to an AI. And the whole point? It claims it can protect you from evil. Yep, you heard that right. Let's unpack this fascinating and honestly kind of bizarre document.
I mean, let's be real. We're all living in an age of total information overload, right? Every single day, you're just bombarded with data. It's so easy to feel like these huge, complex systems, finance, tech, government, are all operating just beyond our grasp. Well, this document, it taps directly into that feeling. It basically suggests that there are these powerful forces at play and we really, really need to be aware of them.
So the person who wrote this, they're not positioning it as just some simple guide. No, they're calling it a defense system. The core idea is that the right question, if you aim it correctly, can literally be a shield. And their solution? To give us an entire armory full of these questions.
All right, so let's get into the core of this whole thing, the library of questions itself.
And look, the author is not kidding around about the scale of this thing. It's a massive A to Z library that covers practically every professional field you can possibly think of. I mean, from academic research to growth hacking. The ambition here is just staggering. And the list, it just goes on and on. You've got influencer marketing, journalism, even lifestyle improvement. The goal seems really clear, to create a launch pad for investigating absolutely anything with an AI as your super-powered research partner. But okay, it's not just about simple, everyday tasks. The library takes this incredible leap in complexity. On one hand, you have basic stuff like summarizing an article, something anyone might do. But then it jumps all the way to what it calls AGI expert prompts. We're talking about questions designed for a future superintelligence, tackling mind-bending stuff like post-singularity scenarios. It's a huge leap from the practical to the purely theoretical.
And this is really where the document starts to get interesting. It doesn't just stick to the practical stuff. It ventures into these highly specialized, sometimes pretty bizarre, and deeply theoretical areas.
Okay, for example, buried deep within hundreds of pages, there's a whole prompt library for airflow dynamics, and it's specifically about something called the gravity-to-Pacific funneling technique. Now, I have no idea what that is, and maybe you don't either, but it's the perfect example of the incredible and frankly eccentric ambition of this whole project.
So, after building out this absolutely massive library of questions, the document does something really interesting. It applies its own method. It basically uses this framework to investigate the very systems it claims we need protection from in the first place.
So let's go back to that dramatic language. Why protect from evil? Well, the document argues this isn't just some theoretical exercise. It then turns its own method on the real world, and it starts to diagnose the threats it sees in some of our most powerful industries. First up in its investigation is the tech industry. The document flags what it considers to be major betrayals of public trust, focusing on things like data privacy and market power.
Next, it moves on to the world of finance, and here it highlights examples of what it frames as systemic corporate fraud.
Then, on the environmental front, it points to specific events that it labels as prime examples of corporate negligence that had, absolutely catastrophic consequences. And finally, it takes aim at labor practices, citing both historical and more recent criticisms aimed at some of the world's biggest brands.
Okay, so after laying out this whole landscape of what it sees as major threats, the document shifts gears. It goes from diagnosis to prescription. It proposes a really detailed blueprint for how an individual can supposedly protect themselves from all these systemic risks.
So what's the common thread tying all this together? Well, the source bundles all these issues, tech, finance, environmental, under one big ominous umbrella, systemic risk. It's basically presenting a worldview where all these threats from the economy, from the government, from corporations are all interconnected.
And its proposed solution? It starts with what it calls the minimal resilience strategy. And honestly, this is where things get intense. We're talking about purchasing remote land, installing off-grid infrastructure, and diversifying your finances into things like precious metals and crypto.
And that so-called minimal plan? That's just the beginning. The document lays out this entire ladder of preparedness, and it escalates pretty dramatically with cost. You go from the off-grid lifestyle to becoming a secure digital nomad, all the way up to an ultra-high net worth strategy that involves things like private compounds. It's basically a blueprint for survival, all tiered by how much money you have.
So here's the crucial point, the thing that ties this all together.
The entire document, from those bizarre prompt libraries all the way to the detailed survival plans, it's all built on one single idea. The argument is that in our incredibly complex world, the ultimate survival skill is strategic questioning. It's about using AI not just to get answers, but as a lens to actually see the risks around you, and then take action before it's too late.
It's a pretty fascinating and definitely provocative premise, right? And it leaves us with a really compelling thought to chew on. If you had an AI that could answer literally anything, and you had this perfect library of questions to guide it, what would you ask first? What hidden truths about our world would you want to uncover?